I never thought I'd be the kind of person who checks their wife's phone while she sleeps. That's what other people do. People in bad marriages, people who don't trust each other, people whose relationships are already circling the drain. Jennifer and I weren't those people. We were solid, 8 years of marriage, and I could count our serious arguments on one hand. But that was before the Tuesday that changed everything. Let me back up. My name is Marcus Chen. I'm 34 years old, and up until 6 months ago, I had what most people would call a successful life. I'm a software architect at a mid-sized tech firm in Portland, the kind of job that pays well enough that we could afford our modest house in the suburbs and still have money left over for Jennifer's annual trip to visit her sister in California. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable, stable, safe. Jennifer worked as a dental hygienist at a practice downtown. She'd come home with stories about difficult patients and office drama, and I'd tell her about code reviews and sprint planning meetings. Normal stuff, boring stuff. The kind of boring that looking back I now realize I should have appreciated more. The stability started cracking 6 months ago when my father was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. 6 months to live, maybe 8 if we were lucky. Dad was 72, a retired civil engineer who'd spent his career designing bridges and his retirement restoring a classic 1967 Mustang that still sat, half-finished in his garage. He was supposed to have time. We were supposed to have time. The diagnosis changed everything. Dad lived alone in the house I grew up in, a 3-bedroom rambler in Beaverton, about 40 minutes from our place. My mother had passed away from breast cancer when I was 19. I was a sophomore in college, and it had nearly destroyed all of us. My older brother Derek had already graduated and moved to Chicago for work. He'd made it back for the funeral, stayed a week, and then returned to his life. Dad and I had picked up the pieces together. When Dad got sick, there was never a question of who would take care of him. Derek had his career in Chicago, some executive position at a consulting firm that I never fully understood, but that paid him enough to afford a condo in Lincoln Park and a wardrobe of suits that cost more than my car. He had a life there. I had flexibility. My company let me work remotely 3 days a week, and Dad's house was close enough that I could check on him daily, so that's what I did. Every morning before work, I'd drive to Dad's house, help him with his medications, make sure he'd eaten something, drive him to his chemo appointments twice a week. On my remote work days, I'd set up my laptop at his kitchen table and work from there, taking breaks to help him to the bathroom or bring him water when the nausea got bad. Jennifer had been supportive. At least that's what I thought. She'd tell me to take whatever time I needed. She'd pack extra portions of dinner for me to take to Dad. She'd ask how he was doing, listen when I needed to vent about how unfair it all was. When I'd come home exhausted and emotionally drained, she'd rub my shoulders and tell me I was doing the right thing. Your dad is lucky to have you, she'd say. Not everyone would do this. I'd think about Derek, who'd visited exactly twice in 6 months, once right after the diagnosis, and once for Thanksgiving, where he'd stayed for 36 hours before citing a work emergency and flying back to Chicago. Each visit, he'd spend maybe an hour with Dad, looking uncomfortable in the house that smelled like sickness and medicine, before retreating to check his phone in the backyard. Dad never complained about it. Derek has his own life, he'd say, but I could see the hurt in his eyes when another week passed without a phone call. I was angry on Dad's behalf, but I also understood. Some people can't handle death. They run from it. I couldn't run. Dad had been there for me every day of my life. The least I could do was be there for his last months. The irony is that I'd turned down a promotion 3 months ago, a senior architect position that would have meant more money, but also more travel and less flexibility. Jennifer had told me it was the right call. Family first, she'd said, kissing my cheek. There will be other opportunities. That was the Jennifer I knew. The Jennifer I trusted. The Jennifer I loved. Which brings me back to that Tuesday. I'd taken Dad to what we thought would be a routine oncology appointment. Just a check-in, maybe adjust some medications. But when we got there, the receptionist told us the doctor had been called away for an emergency surgery. They'd have to reschedule. I could have stayed and worked from Dad's house, but he was having a good day, clear-headed, not too much pain, and he insisted he'd be fine alone for a few hours. Go home. Work from your own office for once, he'd said. I'm going to watch my shows and take a nap. I don't need a babysitter. So I drove home. It was 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday, and I wasn't supposed to be there. Jennifer wouldn't be home from the dental practice until 6. I was looking forward to a few hours of quiet, maybe getting ahead on some work, possibly ordering takeout for dinner so Jennifer wouldn't have to cook. I pulled into our driveway and noticed Jennifer's car was there. That was odd. She almost never came home early. My first thought was that she was sick. I felt a flash of guilt. I'd been so consumed with Dad's illness that I hadn't been paying enough attention to her. If she wasn't feeling well, I hadn't noticed. I let myself in through the front door as quietly as I could, thinking that if she was resting, I didn't want to wake her. The house was quiet, no TV sounds, no music. I set my laptop bag down on the kitchen counter and was about to head upstairs to check on her when I heard her voice. It was coming from my home office, the small room off the living room that I'd converted from a den. The door was cracked open about 3 inches. She was on the phone and her voice had an edge to it I didn't recognize. Not angry exactly. Intense. Focused. No, I told you, it needs to be finalized before anything changes, she was saying. I froze in the hallway. Something in her tone made me stop, made me listen. The house is the main thing, she continued. Once that's transferred, the rest is easier to handle. No, he has no idea. I've been careful. My heart started beating faster. The house? What house? Our house was in both our names. Dad's house was, well, it was Dad's house. Look, I can't talk long. He could come back anytime, Jennifer said. There was a pause. I know. We just have to wait a little longer. A few more months at most, and then we can move forward with everything. Yes, the lawyer said it's all been prepared. We just need the signature. I stood completely still in the hallway, barely breathing. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of what I was hearing. Lawyer? Signature? What the hell was she talking about? Okay, I have to go, she said. I'll call you tonight when he's asleep. Love you too. Love you too. Those 3 words hit me like a physical blow. She said love you too to someone who wasn't me. On the phone, in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon, talking about houses and lawyers and signatures and things I apparently had no idea about. I heard movement in the office. Footsteps. I quickly backtracked into the kitchen, making noise now, dropping my keys loudly on the counter. Jen, you home? She appeared in the doorway of the office within seconds, her face bright with surprise. Marcus, what are you doing home? Is your dad okay? Her concern seemed genuine. Her smile seemed genuine. Everything about her seemed exactly like the woman I'd been married to for 8 years. But I'd heard what I'd heard. Appointment got canceled, I said, watching her face carefully. Doctor had an emergency. What about you? You okay? You never come home early? Oh, she laughed. A light, easy sound. I had a gap in my schedule, 2 cancellations in a row, so they let me leave early. I was just catching up on some emails. She gestured back toward the office. I heard you on the phone, I said. It wasn't an accusation, just a statement. I wanted to see how she'd react. For just a fraction of a second. Maybe I imagined it, maybe I didn't. Her smile faltered. Then it was back, bright and warm. Oh yeah, I was talking to Sarah about vacation rentals. You know how she's always sending me those links to beach houses? I thought maybe once things settle down with your dad, we could take a trip. Get away for a while. You deserve it. Sarah was her sister in San Diego. It was plausible. Sarah did send vacation rental links, but something felt off. The tension in Jennifer's voice when she'd been on the phone, that hadn't sounded like someone casually browsing beach houses. That's sweet of you to think about, I said. What kind of place were you looking at? Oh, just some options, she said vaguely. Nothing concrete. I'll show you later. She moved toward me, putting her arms around my waist. I'm sorry you had a wasted trip. How was your dad this morning? We fell into familiar conversation. I told her about Dad's good day, about the canceled appointment. She told me about a difficult patient who'd refused to floss despite severe gum disease. Normal married people talk, but the whole time a small voice in the back of my head kept repeating what I'd heard. He has no idea. That evening we ordered Thai food and watched a movie. Jennifer fell asleep on the couch, her head on my shoulder, just like she had 1,000 times before. I stared at the TV without seeing it, my mind replaying the phone conversation over and over. There was probably an innocent explanation. There had to be. This was Jennifer, my wife, the woman who'd supported me through Dad's illness, who'd been patient with my exhaustion and emotional distance, the woman who'd stood beside me at our wedding and promised to love me in sickness and in health, for better or worse. But at 2 in the morning, I found myself standing in our bedroom, looking down at Jennifer sleeping peacefully, her phone charging on her nightstand. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But that night, I did something I never thought I'd do. I picked up her phone, held my breath as I typed in her passcode. Our anniversary, 0817, a code I'd known for years because we'd never had secrets, and opened her messages. The Messages app opened, showing her recent conversations. There was a text chain with her sister Sarah, one with her mom, a group chat with her coworkers from the dental practice. Everything looked completely normal. I felt a wave of relief mixed with shame. What was I doing? This was paranoia, caregiver burnout, just like everyone kept warning me about. I was reading sinister intentions into an innocent phone call about vacation rentals because I was exhausted and stressed and looking for problems where there were none. I was about to put the phone back when something caught my eye. At the very top of her messaging list was a conversation with Derek, my brother Derek. That was odd. Jennifer and Derek barely talked. They were cordial at family gatherings, exchanged pleasantries, but they weren't friends. They'd never been friends. Derek had always been dismissive of her, the way he was dismissive of most people he considered beneath his social status, and Jennifer had always found him arrogant and cold. She told me more than once that she didn't understand how we could be brothers. We were so different, so why were they texting? I opened the conversation. The most recent message was from earlier that day, around the time I'd heard her on the phone. Jennifer, call you tonight. He came home early. Derek, be careful. We're too close now. I scrolled up. There were dozens of messages going back weeks. My hands started shaking as I read. Derek, 3 weeks ago. The lawyer says we need to move quickly. His condition could change any day. Jennifer, I know. I'm working on it. He trusts me completely. Derek, good. Keep him focused on the day-to-day care. We need him too exhausted to ask questions. Jennifer, he is. He barely sleeps. He's at your dad's house more than he's here. Derek, perfect. Once Dad signs the new documents, we can move forward with Phase 2. Phase 2. New documents. My mind was reeling. I kept scrolling, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Jennifer, 2 weeks ago. Are you sure this is going to work? Derek, it's already working. Marcus has always been so busy being the good son that he never looks at the bigger picture. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. Jennifer, what if he finds out before? Derek, he won't. You said yourself he's falling apart. And even if he suspects something, who's he going to believe? His wife who's been nothing but supportive? Or his paranoid imagination? I felt sick. Actually, physically sick. I sat down on the edge of the bed, still holding Jennifer's phone, trying to process what I was reading. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding. These messages had to mean something other than what they appeared to mean, but I kept reading. Derek, 10 days ago. I'll be in town next Thursday. Tell Marcus I want to visit Dad. I need to talk to him alone. Jennifer, he'll want to be there. Derek, then make sure he's not. You're good at managing him. Jennifer, it feels wrong sometimes. He's been so devoted to your father. Derek, and he'll get what he deserves. The satisfaction of being the devoted son. We'll get everything else. There was more. So much more. References to meetings with lawyers, discussions about assets, mentions of paperwork and timelines, and woven through it all were casual cruelties about me, about how oblivious I was, about how easy I was to manipulate, about how my devotion to my father had made me the perfect mark. Then I found something that made my blood run cold. An app icon I didn't recognize, a simple gray circle with 2 white arrows forming a circle. I clicked on it. It required a passcode. On instinct, I tried our anniversary again. It opened. It was an encrypted messaging app, Signal, or something like it, and inside were hundreds of messages between Jennifer and Derek, going back 18 months. 18 months, a year and a half, long before Dad got sick. The early messages were flirtatious, then sexual. Photos I will never be able to unsee. Discussions about hotel rooms, about times when I'd be out of town for work conferences, plans coordinated down to the minute. My wife was having an affair with my brother, had been for a year and a half. I read through messages from my last birthday, where I'd thought we'd had a wonderful dinner out with friends. Jennifer had texted Derek from the restaurant bathroom, playing the happy wife. God, this is exhausting. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Messages from our anniversary last August, where we'd gone to the coast for a weekend. He's so sentimental about all this. Talks about growing old together. I just smile and nod. And Derek's response, you're good at that, just a little longer. The old man can't last forever. The old man, my father, who was dying, who they were waiting to die. I kept scrolling dizzy with shock and rage. Then I found the messages from 6 months ago, right after Dad's diagnosis. Derek, this changes the timeline. We need to talk strategy. Jennifer, what do you mean? Derek, Dad's estate, the will. Everything was supposed to be split 50-50 between Marcus and me. But if we play this right, I can get him to change it. Jennifer, how? Derek, Marcus is going to be the devoted son, right? He's going to sacrifice everything to take care of Dad, which means he'll be busy, distracted, emotional. Dad will feel guilty about the burden on him. That's when I suggest that since I'm more financially stable, maybe it makes sense for the estate to go to me. I'll take care of Marcus's share. Make sure he's provided for. Jennifer, your dad won't go for that. Derek, not right away. But over months, with the right pressure, with me flying in occasionally to be the concerned son while Marcus is too exhausted to see straight, we can make it work. Jennifer, and then what? Derek, then once it's done, once I have the estate, you file for divorce. Oregon's a no-fault state. You'll get half of whatever Marcus has, plus the settlement I'll give you from Dad's estate. We split everything and start over, together. Jennifer, he'll contest it. The divorce, the estate, everything. Derek, on what grounds? He's got nothing. You've been the perfect wife. I'll be the grieving son, and Marcus will be the burned-out caregiver who's just being paranoid and emotional. Nobody will believe him. I sat there in the darkness of my bedroom, my wife sleeping peacefully, 3 feet away from me, and felt my entire world disintegrate. Everything I'd believed about my life was a lie. My marriage was a lie. My brother's distance wasn't just selfishness, it was strategy. And my father dying dying and vulnerable was nothing but a bank account to them. I should have woken Jennifer up right then. Should have thrown her out of the house. Should have called Derek and told him exactly what I thought of him, but I didn't. Something held me back. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the lawyer in me. I wasn't a lawyer, but I'd worked with enough of them on contracts to think like one. If I confronted them now, they'd just deny everything, delete the evidence, regroup and try again some other way. No. If this was real, and God it was real, I could see it right there in their own words, then I needed to be smart about it. I needed evidence, documentation. I needed to make sure that when this came out, they couldn't wriggle out of it. I carefully put Jennifer's phone back on the charger, exactly how it had been. I went to the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face, looking at myself in the mirror. The man staring back at me looked the same as always, same dark hair starting to gray at the temples, same tired eyes, same face, but I felt completely different, hollow, like someone had reached inside me and scooped out everything that mattered. I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to Jennifer until the alarm went off at 6:30, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. She woke up, kissed me good morning like she had 1,000 mornings before, and asked what I wanted for breakfast. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rage. I wanted to demand answers. Instead, I smiled and said, just coffee. I need to get to Dad's early today. At Dad's house, I went through the motions. Medications, breakfast, small talk about a documentary he'd watched the night before. The whole time, my mind was elsewhere. I kept thinking about those messages, about Derek's plan to manipulate Dad's estate, about Jennifer's casual cruelty. You all right, son? Dad asked at one point. You seem distracted. Just tired, I said. Didn't sleep well. He studied me with those knowing eyes. Even sick, even dying. My father could read me better than anyone. Is everything okay? With you and Jennifer? The question caught me off guard. Why do you ask? Just a feeling, he said. You seem, I don't know, different lately. I almost told him then. Almost dumped the whole thing out. But I couldn't. He was dying. He had enough to deal with without knowing that his other son was trying to steal his legacy, and that his daughter-in-law was part of the scheme. Everything's fine, Dad. I lied. Just stress. That evening, Jennifer came home from work full of concern. She'd texted me twice during the day. Sweet messages about hoping I was okay, asking if I needed anything. Playing the perfect wife. You look exhausted, she said, rubbing my shoulders as I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. You're pushing yourself too hard. You need to take some time for yourself. I'm fine, I said. You're not fine. Marcus, you're burning out. Everyone can see it. She came around to face me, putting her hands on my cheeks. I love you. I'm worried about you. Maybe Derek should come out more often. Help with your dad. Give you a break. Derek. Of course she'd bring up Derek. Derek has his own life, I said, pulling away from her touch. I can handle it. But you shouldn't have to handle it alone, she pressed. Your dad would understand. He doesn't want you sacrificing everything. Something in her insistence made me suspicious. Was she trying to get me away from Dad so Derek could make his move? Was this part of the plan? I said I'm fine. My voice came out harsher than I intended. Jennifer stepped back, hurt crossing her face. Okay, I'm just trying to help. The guilt was immediate and instinctive. I'd snapped at her. I was being unfair, except I wasn't. Except she was lying to me. Except everything was a performance. I'm sorry, I said, because that's what you say. I'm just stressed. I know, she said softly. It's okay. I understand. But she didn't understand. She couldn't possibly understand what it was like to discover that your entire marriage was a scam, that the person you trusted most in the world was actively plotting against you, that your own brother saw you as nothing but an obstacle to be managed. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Jennifer carefully. Every kindness she showed me felt like a dagger. Every concern she expressed felt like manipulation. She'd suggest I take breaks from visiting Dad. She'd encourage me to let Derek help more. She'd tell me I was being paranoid when I'd ask questions about her day. You're not yourself lately, she said one night. You're suspicious of everything. It's the stress. Maybe you should talk to someone. A therapist. She was trying to make me doubt my own sanity. And the terrifying thing was, it was almost working. Part of me kept thinking, maybe I'd misunderstood the messages. Maybe there was some explanation I wasn't seeing. Maybe I was losing it from caregiver burnout and exhaustion. But then Derek came to visit. He called me a few days before. I'm going to be in Portland next week for work, he said. I thought I'd visit Dad, see how he's doing. That's great, I said, keeping my voice neutral. I'm sure he'd love to see you. Actually, Derek said, I was thinking maybe I could take him to a doctor's appointment or something. Give you a break. You've been doing everything, Marcus. Let me help. There it was. He wanted to get Dad alone. That's really thoughtful, I said. But Dad's pretty particular about his routine. It's easier if I take him, but definitely come by the house. He'd love to see you. There was a pause on Derek's end. Right, of course. I'll text you when I'm in town. When Derek arrived, I made sure I was at Dad's house. Derek looked annoyed when he saw my car in the driveway, but he hid it quickly behind a smile. Marcus, didn't expect to see you here, he said, giving me a one-armed hug that felt like hugging a stranger. Where else would I be? I said. Dad's having lunch. Come on in. Dad lit up when he saw Derek. There's my boy. Marcus, look, your brother came to visit. We sat in the living room making awkward small talk. Derek asked about Dad's treatment, his symptoms, his prognosis. He played the concerned son perfectly. I watched him perform, seeing him clearly for the first time. How had I never noticed how fake his concern was? How calculated his visits were? After about an hour, Derek said, Dad, I was hoping we could chat about some practical things, financial stuff, estate planning, just to make sure everything's in order. Dad glanced at me, then back to Derek. We can talk about that with Marcus here. He's been handling most of my affairs lately. Right, but Derek shifted uncomfortably. Some of it's pretty dry legal stuff. No need to bore Marcus with it. Maybe we could go grab lunch. Just you and me? Derek, Dad said, his voice firmer than I'd heard it in weeks. If you have something to discuss about my estate, Marcus should be there. He's my power of attorney. Derek's smile faltered. You made Marcus your power of attorney. Last month, Dad said. Seemed like the logical choice, given that he's here every day. Is there a problem? I watched Derek's face cycle through emotions. Surprise, anger, calculation, then back to false concern. No problem at all. That makes sense. I didn't realize. I would have told you, Dad said. But you haven't called in a few weeks. Marcus, did you tell your brother? Must have slipped my mind, I said, meeting Derek's eyes. Sorry about that. Derek left an hour later, making excuses about a work dinner. Before he went, he pulled me aside in the hallway. We should talk, he said quietly. About Dad. About making sure he's getting the best care. He's getting excellent care, I said. I'm here every day. What more could he need? I just think, Derek said carefully, that maybe you're too close to it. Too emotional. Maybe we should look at facilities. Professional care. Dad wants to stay in his home. I said, I'm not putting him in a facility so he can die among strangers. Always the smarter, Derek said, and for just a second the mask slipped. I saw real contempt in his eyes. Some of us have lives, Marcus. Jobs, responsibilities beyond playing nurse. Get out, I said quietly. What? Get out of Dad's house. You're not welcome here. Derek laughed, a cold sound. You can't kick me out. This is my father's house too. And I have power of attorney, which means I speak for him on medical and legal matters. So yes, I absolutely can kick you out. Leave. We stared at each other in the hallway of the house we'd grown up in. Two brothers who now understood exactly where they stood. Derek left without saying goodbye to Dad. That night, Jennifer asked me how the visit went. I told her it was fine. Short, but fine. She seemed disappointed, though she tried to hide it. Then she asked me something that confirmed everything I'd feared. Derek mentioned something about your dad's estate. He said you're the power of attorney now. I hadn't told Jennifer that, which meant Derek had told her, which meant they'd talked after his visit. Coordinating. Yeah, I said, watching her face. Dad set it up last month. Why? No reason, she said too quickly. Just surprised you didn't mention it. It didn't seem important, I said. Why would it be important? It's not, she said. Derek seemed concerned about whether you're making the right decisions for your dad. Given how stressed you are, there it was. The narrative they were building, that I was too stressed, too emotional, too compromised to be trusted with Dad's care, that Derek needed to step in, that I needed to be pushed aside. I looked at my wife, this woman I'd loved for 8 years, and saw a complete stranger. Derek can be concerned all he wants, I said, but I'm the one who's been here. I'm the one Dad trusts, and I'm not going anywhere. Jennifer's eyes narrowed just slightly. Then she smiled, soft and loving. Of course not, honey. I know you're doing what's best. I'm proud of you. Later that night, after Jennifer went to bed, I sat in the dark living room and made a decision. They wanted to play games? Fine. I'd play games, but they'd be playing by my rules now. I pulled out my phone and started researching. Private investigators, divorce lawyers, estate attorneys, hidden cameras, digital forensics experts. If they wanted a war, I'd give them a war. But first, I needed to know exactly what I was fighting against. I needed to see the full scope of their plan. I needed evidence that would stand up in court and in the court of public opinion. I needed to let them think they were winning right up until the moment I destroyed them both. 2 weeks later, something happened that changed the entire game. Dad and I were having lunch, soup that he could barely keep down, when he asked me a question that made my blood run cold. Marcus, he said, his voice weak but clear, why does Derek keep asking me to sign things? I set down my spoon very carefully, trying to keep my voice calm. What kind of things, Dad? He looked uncomfortable, the way he always did when talking about Derek. Papers. Legal papers. He sent them by courier last week, said they were just updates to my estate plan, that I should sign them and send them back before talking to anyone else because, he paused, looking down at his soup, because you might get upset and make it difficult. My hands clenched into fists under the table. Do you still have these papers? I didn't sign them, Dad said quickly. Something felt wrong about it. The whole thing felt sneaky. I called Bob, you remember Bob Hutchins, my old lawyer? And he said I shouldn't sign anything without him reviewing it first. Especially not without you present. Bob Hutchins. I remembered him vaguely from childhood. A family friend who'd handled Dad's business contracts and Mom's estate. What did Bob say about the papers? I didn't send them to him yet, Dad admitted. They're in my desk drawer. I kept meaning to, but then I'd feel guilty. Derek's my son. Why would he try to trick me? He looked up at me with watery eyes, but he would, wouldn't he? There's something going on. I can feel it. I reached across the table and took his hand. It felt so fragile, all bone and papery skin. Dad, I need you to trust me. Can you show me the papers? 10 minutes later, I was sitting at Dad's desk, reading through the documents Derek had sent. My hands were shaking with rage. They were estate modification papers, beautifully crafted, official looking, with all the right legal language. And buried in that language, in clause after clause of dense legalese, was a complete transfer of Dad's estate to Derek. Not a split, not a division, everything to Derek. The paperwork claimed it was a simplified estate structure designed to minimize tax burden and expedite asset distribution. It referenced my acknowledged preference to focus on caregiving rather than financial management. It even included a clause where Derek would establish a care fund for me, essentially an allowance that Derek would control. They drafted paperwork to make me my brother's dependent. I read through it 3 times, feeling sicker with each pass. This wasn't just theft. This was systematic, calculated, and almost brilliant in its cruelty. If Dad had signed this, everything would have gone to Derek legally, and I'd have had almost no recourse. Marcus? Dad's voice from the doorway startled me. Is it bad? I looked at my father, 72 years old, dying, trusting, and made a decision. He needed to know. Not everything, not about Jennifer, but enough to protect himself. Dad, Derek is trying to take your entire estate. These papers would give him everything and leave me with nothing. The color drained from Dad's already pale face. He gripped the doorframe. No, that can't be right. Derek wouldn't. Read it yourself, I said, showing him the clauses. It's all here. We sat together for an hour while I explained it all in simple terms. I watched my father's heart break in real time as he realized what his oldest son was trying to do. By the end, he was crying, silent tears running down his gaunt cheeks. I'm sorry, he kept saying. I'm so sorry, Marcus. You've given up everything to take care of me and your own brother. This isn't your fault, I said firmly. None of this is your fault. What do we do? Dad asked. How do we stop him? That's when I told him what I needed to do. What I needed his permission to do. Dad, I need to install security cameras in your house. And I need to record any conversations Derek has with you. I need evidence of what he's doing. Dad didn't hesitate. Do whatever you need to do. That afternoon, I called in sick to work for the first time in 6 months. I drove to a security store and bought a system of small, hidden cameras, the kind marketed for elderly care. 4 cameras, one in Dad's living room, one in his bedroom, one in his study, and one covering the front entrance. They were wireless, uploaded to cloud storage, and completely legal with Dad's consent since it was his home. I spent 3 hours installing them while Dad napped. When I was done, I could monitor every major room in the house from my phone. I set up motion detection alerts. I made sure the recording quality was HD with clear audio. Then I made another call, this one to a private investigator I'd found through careful online research. Her name was Patricia Monroe, a former police detective who now ran her own firm. She had excellent reviews and specialized in infidelity and fraud cases. We met at a coffee shop in downtown Portland. Patricia was in her 50s, gray hair and a practical bob, sharp eyes that missed nothing. I told her everything, the affair, the estate manipulation, all of it. I showed her screenshots I'd taken of Jennifer's messages with Derek. She listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, she looked at me with something like sympathy. How long do you want surveillance? She asked. However long it takes to document everything, I said. The affair, their meetings, anything that proves premeditation and conspiracy. That's gonna be expensive, Patricia warned. Full surveillance, multiple subjects for an extended period. We're talking thousands of dollars. I don't care about the cost, I said. I need everything documented. I need it airtight. We agreed on terms. Patricia would surveil both Jennifer and Derek when he was in town. She'd document their meetings, photograph them together, record their conversations in public spaces where legal. She'd also investigate their communication patterns, financial connections, anything that could prove the conspiracy. One more thing, I said. I need a digital forensics expert, someone who can properly extract and preserve evidence from phones and computers. Court-admissible evidence. Patricia nodded. I know someone. He's expensive too. I told you, I don't care about the cost. That night, I started the most difficult part, acting normal. I came home to Jennifer and smiled. I kissed her hello. I talked about my day, leaving out the cameras, the PI, the lawyer, all of it. I asked about her day at work. She told me about a patient who needed an emergency root canal. She showed me a funny meme one of her coworkers had sent. She asked if I wanted to watch a movie. We sat on the couch like we had hundreds of nights before. She leaned against me. I put my arm around her. And the entire time I was thinking about those messages, about her telling Derek she couldn't wait to be free of me, about them laughing at how oblivious I was. Playing normal was harder than I'd imagined. Every touch felt like poison. Every kind word felt like a knife. But I did it. I had to. Over the next 3 weeks, Patricia's reports started coming in. They were devastating. Jennifer and Derek were meeting regularly. Not just when Derek was in Portland. He was flying in almost weekly now, telling his job he had business on the West Coast. Patricia photographed them at restaurants, walking in parks, entering hotels. She captured them kissing in parking garages, holding hands in dark corners of bars. The digital forensics expert, a quiet man named Carl, who looked more like an accountant than a tech specialist, worked his magic on a remote backup of Jennifer's phone that I'd accessed. He extracted everything, the encrypted messages, the deleted photos, the hidden email accounts. He organized it all chronologically, creating a timeline of the affair and the conspiracy. 18 months of evidence, hundreds of messages, dozens of photos, a complete documented betrayal. But the most damning evidence came from my own cameras. Derek flew in 2 weeks after our confrontation at Dad's house. He didn't tell me he was coming. I only knew because Patricia alerted me that he'd arrived at PDX airport. He went straight to a hotel, checked in, and 3 hours later, Jennifer arrived. Patricia got photos of them entering the hotel together, got them leaving 4 hours later, got Jennifer getting back in her car, checking her makeup in the mirror, then driving home to me. That night, she told me she'd had drinks with coworkers after work, said she was sorry for being late, asked if I'd eaten dinner. I said it was fine. I'd grab something. How were her coworkers? The lies came so easily to her. The next day, Derek went to Dad's house. I got an alert on my phone from the camera system. I was at my own office, supposedly in a meeting, but I had my phone under the table, watching the live feed. Derek let himself in with a key I didn't know he had. Dad was in his recliner, watching TV. Derek, what are you doing here? Dad's voice came through clearly on the audio. I was in town. Thought I'd stop by, Derek said. He sat down across from Dad. Have you thought more about those papers I sent? I told you, I'm not signing anything without Bob reviewing it, Dad said. Derek's expression hardened. I'd never seen him look at Dad like that. Cold, calculating, almost cruel. Dad, this is getting ridiculous. Marcus has you completely paranoid. Marcus explained what those papers actually say, Dad said. You tried to cut him out entirely, Derek. Your own brother. Marcus is too close to the situation to think clearly, Derek said. He's exhausted. He's emotional. And frankly, he's not making good decisions. The estate needs to be handled by someone with a clear head. Someone like you. Dad's voice was bitter. Yes, like me. I have financial experience. I'm not burned out from months of caregiving. And whether you want to admit it or not, Marcus resents me. He resents that I have a successful career while he's stuck playing nurse. If you split the estate 50-50, he'll contest it. He'll drag everything through court. This way is cleaner. I was gripping my phone so hard my knuckles were white. The lies were so smooth, so practiced. Derek, Dad said quietly. When did you become someone I don't recognize? Derek stood up. I'm trying to help this family. I'm trying to be practical. But if you want to let Marcus manipulate you because you feel guilty about him sacrificing his life for you, that's your choice. Just know that when you're gone, he's gonna have nothing. No career advancement, no savings, just years of resentment and medical debt. Get out of my house, Dad said. What? Get out, and don't come back without Marcus present. Derek stared at him for a long moment. Then he laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. You're making a mistake. When you're ready to think clearly, call me. But don't wait too long. You don't have much time left. He walked out. The camera caught Dad sitting in his recliner, tears streaming down his face. I left work immediately and drove to Dad's house. I found him exactly where I'd seen him on the camera, still crying. I saw it, I told him, holding up my phone. The cameras caught everything. He's not my son anymore, Dad said. I don't know who that man is, but he's not my son. We sat together for hours. I showed Dad all of it, not the affair. He didn't need to know about that, but the estate manipulation, the messages about managing me, the coordination, everything that proved Derek's intentions. Dad was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then he said, I want to change my will, officially. I want everything to go to you, and I want it documented exactly why I'm doing it. The next day, I called Bob Hutchins. We met at his office, me, Dad, and Bob. Dad was weak, needed a wheelchair to get from the car, but his mind was sharp and his intention was clear. Bob drafted new estate documents. They were explicit and detailed. They stated that due to attempted manipulation and coercion by Derek Chen, the entire estate would go to Marcus Chen. They included a clause stating that any contest of the will would result in legal fees being paid from the estate, effectively punishing Derek for challenging it. Dad signed them. Bob had them witnessed and notarized. He made multiple copies and filed them with the appropriate courts. The old will was officially revoked. This is ironclad, Bob told us. Derek can try to contest it, but he'll lose, and it'll cost him. Driving home, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. The estate was secure. Dad was protected. Now I just needed to deal with Jennifer and Derek's other plans. That night, Jennifer asked how Dad was doing. Not great, I said, which was true. The cancer's progressing faster than we hoped. I'm so sorry, honey, she said, touching my face. This must be so hard for you. It is, I said, but I'm managing. Derek called me today, she said casually. He's worried about you, about how much pressure you're under. I kept my expression neutral. Derek called you? That's odd. You two barely talk. A flicker of something crossed her face. Well, we're family. He's concerned. He thinks maybe you need more support. Maybe even professional help. Professional help, like a therapist. Or maybe a grief counselor. He just wants what's best for you. She was setting the stage, building the narrative that I was unstable, that I needed professional help, that my judgment couldn't be trusted. laying the groundwork for whatever they had planned next. That's thoughtful of him, I said. But I'm fine. Are you, though? Jennifer pressed. Marcus, you've been acting strange lately. Distant, suspicious, even paranoid sometimes. I'm worried about you. There it was. Gaslighting 101. Make the victim doubt their own perception of reality. I'm just tired, I said. It's more than tired, she insisted. You're not yourself. You need to talk to someone. Please. For me? I looked at my wife, this woman I'd promised to spend my life with, and played my part. Okay, I'll think about it. She smiled, relieved. Good, I love you. I just want you to be okay. I know, I lied. I love you too. That night, while she slept, I met with Patricia at an all-night diner. She brought a folder of new evidence. They're escalating, she said. Derek's been contacting lawyers, not just estate lawyers. He's been talking to psychiatrists. I think he's trying to build a case for you being mentally unfit. On what basis? Caregiver stress, paranoia, possible depression. If he can get a doctor to say you're not competent to serve as power of attorney, he can try to take over your father's medical and financial decisions. Can he actually do that? If he has documentation? If he can show a pattern of erratic behavior? Maybe. It's a long shot, but he's exploring it. I felt cold. What do I need to do? Get ahead of it. Document your own mental health. Get a therapist, actually. Have them evaluate you, and state in writing that you're competent and stable. It'll undercut his narrative. I did exactly that. Made an appointment with a therapist. Was completely honest about the stress I was under, though not about the surveillance and investigation. She evaluated me, gave me some coping strategies, and provided a written statement that I was managing my father's terminal illness appropriately, and showed no signs of mental incompetence. I also started documenting everything in a journal. Every conversation with Derek. Every time Jennifer tried to suggest I was being paranoid. Every instance of them trying to manipulate me or Dad. I wrote it all down with dates, times, and details. Meanwhile, Carl, the forensics expert, made a discovery that changed everything. I found a shared bank account. He told me over the phone. It's in both their names, Derek and Jennifer. It's been active for 14 months. My stomach dropped. How much? Currently? About $60,000. Jennifer's been depositing money from your joint account in small increments, always under $10,000 to avoid banking reporting requirements. She's been systematically stealing from you and pooling it with Derek. Financial fraud. Embezzlement. This wasn't just an affair anymore. It was criminal. Can you document all the transfers? I asked. Already done. I have a complete transaction history with dates and amounts. It's ironclad. I sat in my car outside Dad's house, processing this new information. They'd been stealing from me for over a year, taking my money. Money I'd earned, money I'd trusted Jennifer to help manage, and hiding it away for their future together. How much had I lost? How much had I not noticed because I was too busy taking care of my dying father to check the accounts carefully? I called my lawyer, a divorce attorney I'd been consulting with quietly for weeks. Her name was Rachel Kwan, and she was known for being ruthless in high-conflict divorces. We have enough, I told her. I want to move forward. Are you sure? Rachel asked. Once we file, there's no going back. I'm sure. I want the divorce papers drawn up, I want them served at the right moment, and I want her to get nothing. The prenup will help, Rachel said, but the fraud evidence makes it even stronger. A prenuptial agreement can be voided if there's fraud, but in this case, the fraud works in your favor. She violated the terms of the marriage contract through adultery and theft. We spent 2 hours on the phone going through strategy. Rachel would prepare everything. Divorce papers, restraining orders, if needed, asset freezes, criminal referrals to the DA's office for the embezzlement. Everything would be ready to go, waiting for the right moment to deploy. When do you want to serve her? Rachel asked. Not yet, I said. I need Derek here. I need them both in the same place when this comes down. I want them to know they lost. Together. That's risky, Rachel warned. Gives them more time to hide assets or destroy evidence. They won't, I said, because they don't know I know. They think they're winning. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched and waited. Patricia continued surveillance. Carl continued extracting data. I continued playing the devoted husband and son. Jennifer suggested I see the therapist more often. Told me I seemed better but still stressed. Asked if I'd talked to Derek lately. Dropped hints about maybe taking a break from caregiving. All the while, Dad was getting worse. The cancer was aggressive. We were down to weeks now, maybe days. Every evening I'd sit with him, and we'd talk about everything except the fact that he was dying and my entire life was falling apart. When this is over, he told me one night, when I'm gone, you're going to rebuild. You're going to find someone who actually deserves you, and you're going to be happy. Promise me. I promise, Dad, I said, holding his hand. And Marcus, when the time comes, don't hold back. What they're doing, what they tried to do, it can't go unpunished. You have to stand up for yourself. I will, Dad. I promise. Then, 3 days later, Dad asked me to arrange a family meeting. I want everyone here, he said. You, Derek, Jennifer. I want to tell Derek myself what I've decided about the estate. I want him to hear it from me, and I want witnesses. This was it, the moment I'd been preparing for. I called Derek, told him Dad wanted to see him, that Dad wanted to discuss the estate. Derek said he'd fly in immediately. I told Jennifer about the meeting. She tried to hide her excitement, but failed. She probably thought this was it, that Dad was finally going to sign something in Derek's favor. Patricia advised me to have multiple forms of documentation ready. I arranged for Bob Hutchins to be there as Dad's lawyer. Rachel Kwan prepared to be on standby. I made sure all the cameras were working perfectly, and I planned exactly how I was going to destroy them both. The meeting was scheduled for Saturday afternoon at Dad's house. Dad was having a relatively good day, lucid, strong enough to sit up in his wheelchair, determined to see this through. Derek arrived first, flying in Friday night. Patricia watched him check into his usual hotel. She photographed him making a phone call from the parking lot, probably to Jennifer. Saturday morning, I got to Dad's house early, made sure everything was set up, the cameras were recording, my phone was fully charged. I had printed copies of everything, the messages, the affair photos, the bank statements, all of it in a folder in my car. Jennifer offered to come with me. For support, she said. That would be great, I told her, smiling. Dad would appreciate it. We drove to Dad's house together. She held my hand in the car, told me everything would be okay, that families could work through anything. I wanted to throw up. When we arrived, Derek was already there, sitting in the living room making awkward small talk with Dad. Bob Hutchins sat in the corner with his briefcase. Everyone was positioned exactly where I wanted them. The cameras caught everything. Dad looked at all of us and said, "Thank you for coming. I know this hasn't been easy, but I wanted to tell you all together what I've decided about my estate." Derek leaned forward. Jennifer squeezed my hand, and I prepared to watch their world explode. Dad's living room had never felt so small. 5 people crowded into a space designed for family gatherings and Sunday dinners, but this was no celebration. The afternoon light filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows across the worn carpet. I could hear the oxygen concentrator humming in the background, a constant reminder of why we were all here. Derek sat in the armchair closest to Dad, legs crossed, wearing one of his expensive suits despite the casual setting. He looked confident, almost smug. Jennifer sat beside me on the couch, her hand still resting on my knee, in a gesture that once would have comforted me. Now it just made my skin crawl. Bob Hutchins occupied the chair by the window, his briefcase at his feet, his expression carefully neutral. Dad sat in his wheelchair, wrapped in the blanket I'd bought him last month, soft fleece with a pattern pattern of mountains and pine trees. He looked impossibly small, diminished by illness, but his eyes were sharp, alert, ready. I wanted everyone here, Dad began, his voice stronger than it had been in days, because I think it's time we stopped pretending. Time we put everything on the table. Derek nodded sympathetically. I think that's a good idea, Dad. Marcus has been under so much stress. We all need to work together. I'm not talking about Marcus, Dad interrupted. I'm talking about you, Derek. The room went still. Derek's expression shifted, confusion replacing confidence. Me, Dad, I don't understand. Yes, you do. Dad's voice was firm. You sent me papers 3 weeks ago. Estate modification documents. You told me to sign them without showing them to anyone, without talking to Marcus, without even talking to my lawyer. Jennifer's hand tightened on my knee. I felt her stiffen beside me. Derek's face went carefully blank. Those were just standard estate planning documents. I was trying to help simplify things. They would have given you my entire estate, Dad said flatly. Everything. The house, the investments, the life insurance. All to you. Marcus would have gotten nothing. That's not, Derek started, but Dad held up a trembling hand. Bob read them. Marcus read them. We all know exactly what they said. Dad turned to look at me, his eyes full of grief and love. My son, my actual son, the one who has sacrificed everything to take care of me these last 6 months. You tried to cut him out completely. Derek stood up abruptly. Dad, you don't understand the full picture. Marcus has been filling your head with lies. He's paranoid. He's exhausted. Sit down, Derek, Bob Hutchins said quietly. It wasn't a suggestion. Derek sat, but his jaw was clenched. I could see his mind working, trying to figure out how to regain control of the situation. I want to tell you all what I've decided, Dad continued. I've revised my will. Everything goes to Marcus. The house, the accounts, the business assets. All of it. Bob has filed the paperwork. It's done. Jennifer's hand flew off my knee. I felt her go rigid beside me. Derek's face went white, then red. You can't do that, Derek said, his voice rising. I'm your son too. You can't just. I can do whatever I want with my estate, Dad said. It's mine. And I'm leaving it to the person who earned it. Not through blood, not through obligation, but through being here, through caring, through love. This is bullshit. Derek exploded, standing again. You're letting Marcus manipulate you because you feel guilty. This is exactly what I warned you about. When did you warn him? I asked quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken. Everyone turned to look at me. When did you warn Dad about me? Derek's eyes narrowed. When I visited 2 weeks ago, I told him you weren't thinking clearly, that the stress was affecting your judgment. You mean when you let yourself into Dad's house with a key I didn't know you had? I pulled out my phone. When you told Dad that I resent you, that I'd contest the will out of spite. Derek's face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Really? I opened the camera app on my phone, pulled up the saved footage and turned the screen toward Derek, because I have video of the entire conversation. I pressed play. Derek's voice filled the room. Marcus is too close to the situation to think clearly. He's exhausted, he's emotional, and frankly, he's not making good decisions. Then Dad's voice. Marcus explained what those papers actually say. You tried to cut him out entirely, Derek. Your own brother. And Derek's response, cold and calculated. Whether you want to admit it or not, Marcus resents me. He resents that I have a successful career while he's stuck playing nurse. I stopped the video. The silence in the room was deafening. I installed cameras, I said calmly, with Dad's permission, security cameras for his protection. They caught everything, Derek. Every visit, every attempt to manipulate him, every lie. Derek was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. You were spying on me? I was protecting Dad from you, I corrected. And it's a good thing I did. Jennifer was looking between us, her face carefully composed, but I could see panic in her eyes. She didn't know how much I knew. Not yet. This is insane, Derek said, turning to Dad. You're going to believe his surveillance footage over your own son? He's clearly unstable. He's recording family members, seeing conspiracies. I have more than just video, I said. I stood up and walked to the hallway where I'd left the folder. My hands were steady. My voice was steady. I'd practiced this moment in my head 100 times. I returned with the folder and set it on the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud. What is that? Derek asked. Evidence, I said, of everything. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, a printout of text messages between Derek and Jennifer. I handed it to Dad first, then to Bob. I watched Derek's face drain of all color. What are those? Jennifer's voice was small, strained. Messages between you and Derek, I said, still calm, from your encrypted messaging app, the one you thought I didn't know about. I pulled out another stack of papers. These are from your regular messages. 18 months of conversations, planning, coordinating. I read from one of the pages. Keep him focused on the day-to-day care. We need him too exhausted to ask questions. Jennifer stood up. Marcus, let me explain. Sit down, I said, and something in my voice made her obey. You'll get your turn. I pulled out more papers. Bank statements. This is the account you opened together. $60,000. Money Jennifer has been systematically stealing from our joint accounts and funneling to Derek over the last 14 months. Bob Hutchins leaned forward, suddenly very interested. That's embezzlement. Yes, I agreed. It is. Derek finally found his voice. You hacked Jennifer's phone. That's illegal. None of this is admissible. I didn't hack anything, I said. I accessed cloud backups of data from my own devices and joint accounts, with the help of a digital forensics expert. Everything was obtained legally. And yes, it's all admissible. I pulled out the photographs next. Patricia had done excellent work. There were dozens of them. Derek and Jennifer at restaurants, walking together, entering hotels, leaving hotels. Derek's hand on the small of Jennifer's back. Jennifer kissing Derek in a parking garage. I handed them to Dad. He looked through them slowly, his hands shaking. When he looked up at Derek, there were tears in his eyes. How long? Dad asked quietly. Derek said nothing. 18 months, I answered for him. The affair started 18 months ago. At our wedding anniversary party, actually. Jennifer got drunk and Derek offered to drive her home. I stayed to help clean up. I looked at Jennifer. That was the first time, wasn't it? In our guest room, while I was thanking our friends for coming, Jennifer's face crumpled. Marcus, please, answer the question. Yes, she whispered. Dad made a sound like he'd been punched. Bob Hutchins was writing notes furiously. Here's what I know, I continued, my voice still terrifyingly calm. Derek has been planning to steal the estate for months. He needed Dad to sign those documents before he died. Jennifer was helping, keeping me distracted, keeping me busy, making sure I was too exhausted to pay attention. I pulled out more messages. Marcus is so busy with his dying father, he doesn't suspect anything. We just need to wait. That's you, Jennifer. And this one's good too. Once the old man signs, you file for divorce. We'll have everything. Jennifer was crying now, full, gasping sobs, but I wasn't done. The plan was simple. Get the estate transferred to Derek. Then Jennifer files for divorce. Because of our prenup, she wouldn't get much from me directly. We were smart about protecting assets when we got married. Remember that, Jen? You insisted on the prenup. Said it was romantic, that it meant we were marrying for love, not money. She wouldn't look at me. But if Derek had the estate, I continued, he could give Jennifer part of it as a settlement, split it with her, then they'd both disappear to start their new life together. And I'd be left with nothing. No wife, no inheritance, no family, just debt and grief, and the knowledge that I'd been played for a fool. That's not Derek started, but I cut him off. I have everything, Derek. Every message, every phone call, every hotel receipt. Patricia Monroe is a very thorough private investigator. She's been following you both for 3 weeks. Derek's head snapped up. You hired a PI? I hired the best PI in Portland, I said. She documented everything. She has photos of you and Jennifer together, video of you entering hotels, timestamped, dated, geotagged. She followed the money trail. She has witness statements from hotel staff who recognized you both. I turned to Jennifer. She also documented that time you told me you were having drinks with coworkers. Remember that? 2 weeks ago? You were late getting home? Jennifer's sobs got louder. You weren't with coworkers. You were with Derek at the Marriott downtown, room 847. You were there for 4 hours. I looked at Derek. You flew in just for that visit, just to see her. And then you came here the next day to pressure Dad again. Bob Hutchins spoke up. Mr. Chen, Marcus, what do you intend to do with all this evidence? I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment I'd been building toward. I intend to file for divorce, I said. The papers are already drawn up. My attorney is waiting for my call. Jennifer will be served within the hour. Jennifer looked up at me, mascara running down her face. Marcus, please, we can talk about this. There's nothing to talk about, I said. The prenup has an infidelity clause. You get nothing. Not the house, not the car, not a penny of alimony. You violated the agreement through adultery and fraud. I also intend to press criminal charges, I continued. For the embezzlement, $60,000 is a felony in Oregon. You could face prison time. Marcus, Jennifer reached for me, but I stepped back. Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again. I turned to Derek. As for you, Dad's will is ironclad. You can contest it if you want, but you'll lose. And per the terms Dad and Bob drafted, if you contest it, you'll have to pay all legal fees from your own pocket. You'll spend tens of thousands of dollars to accomplish nothing. I'm also filing a complaint with Oregon Adult Protective Services, I added, for attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. That's what you did, Derek. You tried to defraud a dying man, your own father. Derek's hands were shaking. You can't prove intent. I have your messages. I have video of you pressuring him. I have the fraudulent documents you sent. Yes, Derek, I can prove intent, and I will. Dad spoke then, his voice hoarse. Derek, I want you to leave. Leave my house. Don't come back. Not for the funeral. Not ever. Dad, please. Derek's mask finally cracked. I saw real panic in his eyes. You're not my son anymore, Dad said. A son doesn't do what you did. A son doesn't look at his dying father and see a bank account. Get out. Derek stood there for a long moment, looking between Dad and me, probably trying to calculate if there was any play left to make. There wasn't. He'd lost. Completely. Utterly. You're going to regret this, Derek finally said, looking at me. Both of you. The only regret I have, I said quietly, is that I didn't see who you really were sooner. That I wasted years thinking of you as my brother when you were just a predator waiting for an opportunity. Derek grabbed his coat and walked toward the door. He stopped when he reached it, turned back one more time. This isn't over. Yes, I said. It really is. He left. The door slammed behind him. In the silence that followed, I could hear Jennifer still crying. Dad's labored breathing, the oxygen concentrator humming. Jennifer stood up on shaky legs. Marcus, I know I've hurt you. I know I've made terrible mistakes, but we can work through this. We can go to counseling. We can stop, I said. The word came out harder than I intended. Just stop. Do you really think there's anything you could say right now that would make this better? That would make me forget what you did? I love you, she said desperately. I made mistakes, but I love you. You love me? I felt something break inside me. The calm I'd maintained for an hour shattered. You love me? You fucked my brother for 18 months. You stole from me. You conspired to destroy my father's legacy. That's not love, Jennifer. That's not even close to love. I got confused, she sobbed. Derek was exciting and you were always at your father's house and I felt neglected. I was taking care of my dying father. My voice rose despite my best efforts. I was doing what any decent human being would do. And you used that. You and Derek used my grief, my compassion, my love for my father as an opportunity to betray me. I'm sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry. No, you're not, I said, feeling suddenly exhausted. You're sorry you got caught. If I hadn't found out, if I hadn't installed those cameras, if I hadn't checked your phone that night, you would have gone through with it. You would have taken everything and left me with nothing. She had no response to that. Bob has your divorce papers, I said. He'll serve you after this meeting. You have 24 hours to move out of our house. Take your clothes and personal items only. Nothing else. I'll have the locks changed by tomorrow night. Where am I supposed to go? She asked. I looked at her. This woman I'd loved. This woman who destroyed everything and felt nothing but emptiness. I don't know. I don't care. Call Derek. I'm sure he'll help you. Or maybe he won't. Maybe now that the plan failed, you're not useful to him anymore. Either way, that's not my problem. Marcus, get out of my father's house, I said quietly. Now, she looked at Dad, maybe hoping for some intervention, some mercy. Dad just turned his wheelchair away from her. Jennifer grabbed her purse and left. I watched through the window as she got in her car, sat there for a long moment with her head on the steering wheel, then finally drove away. When the sound of her car faded, I collapsed onto the couch. The adrenaline that had sustained me through the confrontation drained away, leaving me hollow. Dad wheeled over to me. Marcus. I looked up at him. Yeah, Dad. I'm so sorry, he said. I'm sorry that my other son, that Derek, did this to you. I'm sorry that I didn't see it sooner. I'm sorry that trying to do the right thing cost you your marriage. My marriage was already over, I said. I just didn't know it yet. Still, Dad said. He reached out and took my hand. His grip was weak but steady. You deserve so much better than what they gave you. Better than Derek's betrayal. Better than Jennifer's lies. I know, I said, and I did know, but knowing didn't make it hurt less. Bob Hutchins started packing up his briefcase. I'll file the formal complaints first thing Monday morning. Adult Protective Services, the DA's office, all of it. I'll also make sure the divorce proceeds smoothly. Marcus, you're going to need to document everything going forward. Any contact Derek or Jennifer makes with you, save it. Record it if legal. Don't engage, just document. I understand, I said. Bob paused at the door. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Your father is a good man. You're a good man. You both deserved better than this. After he left, it was just me and Dad in the quiet house. The house I'd grown up in. The house full of memories of Mom before the cancer. Of Christmas mornings and birthday parties. Of Derek and me as kids before everything went wrong. What happens now? Dad asked. Now? I looked at him. Now I take care of you. That's all that matters. We'll deal with the legal stuff as it comes. But my priority is you. Dad smiled, tears in his eyes. How did I get so lucky to have a son like you? I'm the lucky one, Dad, I said. You taught me how to be a decent person. How to do the right thing even when it's hard. Derek learned different lessons, I guess. We sat together in silence for a while. Then Dad said something that I'll never forget. Marcus, when I'm gone and it won't be much longer, we both know that I need you to promise me something. Anything, Dad. Don't let let this make you bitter. Don't let Derek and Jennifer's betrayal turn you into someone hard and cynical. You're too good for that. Promise me you'll heal, that you'll find love again, that you'll be happy. I promise, I said, though I couldn't imagine how that would be possible. Good, Dad said, because you deserve happiness. You deserve someone who sees how extraordinary you are, someone who would never betray you. She's out there, son. I know she is. I stayed with Dad until late that night. We watched old movies and ate takeout Chinese food. We talked about Mom, about memories from when Derek and I were kids and things were simpler. We didn't talk about what had happened that afternoon. We didn't need to. When I finally drove home to the house that was suddenly empty, that Jennifer would be clearing out of tomorrow, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. It was over. The lies, the pretending, the watching my wife perform affection while plotting my destruction. It was finally over. Yes, my marriage had ended. Yes, I'd lost my brother. Yes, my life would be different than I'd planned. But I was free. Free from deception. Free from people who saw me as a target rather than family. Free to rebuild on my own terms. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia Monroe. Jennifer just checked into a Holiday Inn on 82nd. Derek's flight to Chicago leaves at 6 a.m. tomorrow. Want me to keep surveilling? I texted back, no. We have everything we need. Send me your final invoice. And thank you. You're welcome. For what it's worth, you handled that like a pro. Good luck with everything. I set my phone down and looked around the house. Tomorrow I'd change the locks. I'd go through and remove all traces of Jennifer. I'd start the process of disentangling our lives. But tonight, I just sat in the darkness and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back for weeks. The grief, the anger, the betrayal, the loss, and underneath it all, something else. Hope. Because Dad was right. I deserved better. And now, finally, I could start working toward it. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Rachel Kwan, my divorce attorney. Papers served. She signed for them at 9:47 p.m. It's official. Welcome to the first day of your new life. I smiled, despite everything. The first day of my new life. It started in ruins, but from ruins you could rebuild. And this time, I'd build something that couldn't be betrayed. Something real. I raised an imaginary glass to the empty house. To new beginnings, I said to no one. And somewhere, I swear I heard my mother's voice gone 15 years but never forgotten. Whisper back, to new beginnings, sweetheart. You're going to be just fine. The next morning, I woke up in my own house for the first time in 8 years as a single man. The bed felt too big. The silence felt too loud. Everything felt wrong in a way that was somehow also right. Jennifer had already been by. I could tell because her closet was empty, just bare hangers and dust bunnies where her shoes used to be. The bathroom counter where her makeup and products had lived was clean. She'd taken her jewelry box, her photos, even the decorative pillows she'd insisted we needed for the couch. She'd left her wedding ring on the kitchen counter with a note. I'm sorry for everything. I know you won't believe me, but I really did love you once. I hope someday you can forgive me. I threw the note away, put the ring in a drawer. Forgiveness wasn't on my agenda. My phone rang. It was Bob Hutchins. Marcus, I filed the complaints this morning. Adult Protective Services is opening an investigation into Derek's attempted exploitation. I also contacted the DA's office about the embezzlement. They're interested. How interested? I asked. Very. $60,000 is serious money, and the pattern of behavior, small deposits designed to avoid reporting requirements, shows criminal intent. The DA wants to meet with you this week. Okay, I said. Set it up. There's something else, Bob continued. Derek's lawyer called me this morning. They want to negotiate. Negotiate what? There's nothing to negotiate. That's what I told them. But they're claiming Derek's behavior was misguided but not criminal. They're offering to drop any contest of the will if you agree not to pursue criminal charges. I laughed. Actually laughed. Tell Derek's lawyer that he can go fuck himself. Derek tried to destroy my father's last wishes and steal everything we had. I'm not dropping anything. I figured you'd say that, Bob said. I'll convey the message. More diplomatically. You do that. After hanging up, I drove to Dad's house. He was having a bad morning. The pain was worse. The medication making him groggy. I helped him into clean clothes, got him to eat a few bites of oatmeal, administered his medications. The routine was familiar now. Comforting even. How are you doing, he asked me. His voice weak but concerned. Always concerned about me, even while dying. I'm okay, I said. And surprisingly, it was true. Better than I expected, actually. Good, Dad said. That's good. We spent the afternoon watching basketball. Neither of us particularly cared about the game, but it was something to fill the silence. Around 3, Dad's pain got worse. I gave him his breakthrough medication and stayed with him until he fell asleep in his recliner. My phone buzzed. Rachel Kwan, my divorce attorney. Jennifer's lawyer is already reaching out about settlement. She wants to negotiate the terms. I'm holding firm on the prenup with the infidelity clause. She gets nothing. I texted back. Perfect. Don't budge. The next few days passed in a blur. I took emergency leave from work. My boss was understanding. Told me to take all the time I needed. I spent my days with Dad, whose condition was deteriorating rapidly. The hospice nurse said we were down to days now. Maybe a week at most. Dad slept more. Ate less. Some days he was lucid and we could talk. Other days he barely knew I was there. Those were the hardest days. On Wednesday, I met with the DA. Her name was Catherine Morrison, a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in financial crimes. I brought all the evidence, the bank statements, the transaction records, Carl's forensic analysis. She reviewed everything methodically. This is solid, she said. Clear pattern of embezzlement. The fact that she used your joint accounts makes it even more egregious. It's not just theft, it's exploitation of marital trust. What happens now? I asked. I'll present this to the grand jury. If they indict, and I'm confident they will, she'll face felony theft charges. She could get up to 5 years in prison, plus fines and restitution. And Derek? Catherine hesitated. The Adult Protective Services investigation is ongoing. They're interviewing your father, reviewing the documents Derek sent, looking at the pattern of behavior. If they determine it was attempted exploitation, there could be criminal charges there too. Could be. Elder abuse cases are tricky, she admitted. We have to prove intent, and that your father was actually vulnerable at the time. The fact that he didn't sign the documents works against us. It shows he had capacity to resist. But the attempt itself, combined with the pressure tactics caught on your cameras, builds a strong case. I left the DA's office feeling something like satisfaction. The wheels of justice were turning, slowly but turning. That evening, Jennifer called me. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want? I answered. Marcus, please. Her voice was desperate. We need to talk. My lawyer says you're pressing criminal charges. This is insane. I made mistakes, but prison? Really? You stole $60,000 from me, I said flatly. Over more than a year. That's not a mistake, Jennifer. That's a felony. It was our money. No, I interrupted. It was my money from my job that went into our joint account. Money you systematically stole and gave to my brother to fund your future together. Money you took while I was taking care of my dying father. Silence on the other end. Please, she finally said. I'm begging you. Drop the charges. I'll pay you back. Every penny. I'll get a payment plan. I'll work extra shifts. With what money, Jennifer? The hidden account is frozen. Your wages are going to be garnished for restitution. You don't have anything. I'll figure it out. Just please don't send me to prison. You should have thought about that before you fucked my brother and stole from me. I said. Goodbye, Jennifer. I hung up. Blocked her number. I didn't need to hear from her again. Friday morning, I got a call from Derek. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Marcus, it's Derek. Look, I know you're angry. I know I screwed up, but this has gone far enough. The APS investigation, the will, all of it. You're destroying our family over a misunderstanding. Dad's not thinking clearly. The cancer, the medications. He's not competent to make these decisions. When he's gone, we're all we'll have left. We're brothers. That has to count for something. I deleted the voicemail without listening to the rest. Derek understood nothing. We weren't brothers. We shared DNA and a last name, but that was all. Brothers don't betray each other. Brothers don't prey on each other's grief. That weekend, Dad took a turn for the worse. The hospice nurse increased his morphine. He drifted in and out of consciousness. During a lucid moment on Saturday afternoon, he gripped my hand. Marcus, he whispered, I'm here, Dad. You did good. So proud of you. Your mother would be proud too. Thanks, Dad. My throat was tight. Don't let them win. Even after I'm gone. Don't let Derek take anything. Promise. I promise. Love you, son. Love you too, Dad. He fell asleep then and didn't wake up again. On Sunday morning, October 15th at 6:47 a.m., my father passed away. I was holding his hand. The hospice nurse said he went peacefully, that it was a good death as far as such things go. I didn't feel like it was a good anything. I just felt empty. The funeral arrangements were surprisingly simple. Dad had pre-planned everything years ago, after Mom died. He'd chosen a simple service, cremation, no fuss. I don't want people crying over my corpse, he'd told me once. Just celebrate that I lived. So that's what we did. The service was the following Saturday at a small funeral home in Beaverton. I'd sent announcements to extended family, Dad's old work colleagues, longtime friends. I did not invite Derek. When he called demanding to know when and where the funeral was, I told him he wasn't welcome. That's my father, he'd shouted. He specifically said you weren't to be there, I said calmly. He wanted you out of his life. I'm honoring his wishes. I'm contesting the will, Derek threatened. I'll tie this up in court for years. Do it, I said. You'll lose and pay both sides legal fees. Bob Hutchins made sure of that. Derek hung up on me. The funeral was beautiful. About 60 people came, more than I expected. Dad's old colleagues told stories about his engineering projects, the bridges he'd helped design that still stood all over Oregon. His fishing buddies talked about weekend trips to the coast. His neighbors remembered him as the guy who'd help anyone fix anything, who always had the right tool and the patience to teach you how to use it. I gave the eulogy. I talked about Dad's integrity, his kindness, his dedication to family. I talked about how he'd raised two sons the same way, with the same values, but how we'd turned out differently. I didn't mention Derek by name, but everyone understood. My father taught me that character is what you do when no one's watching. I said, he taught me that family isn't just blood, it's showing up. It's sacrifice. It's love through action, not just words. He lived those values every day of his life, and in his final months when he was vulnerable and sick, he still had the strength to stand up for what was right, to reject manipulation, to choose integrity over ease. My voice cracked. I'll miss him every day for the rest of my life, but I'll carry forward what he taught me, and I'll make sure his legacy, the real legacy of his values and his character, lives on. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. After the service, at the reception, people kept coming up to me, telling me I'd done right by Dad, telling me they'd heard rumors about Derek, small community word travels, and that Dad was smart to protect his estate. One of Dad's oldest friends, a man named Robert who'd worked with him for 30 years, pulled me aside. I knew your father since you were in diapers, Robert said. He talked about you boys all the time, used to brag about both of you, but these last few years, something changed. He stopped mentioning Derek much, and when he did, there was always this sadness in his voice. Yeah, I said, Derek changed. Or maybe he just became more of who he always was, Robert said. Your father saw that. It broke his heart, but he saw it. He knew you were the one who inherited what mattered. His character, his compassion. That's worth more than any estate. I thanked him, emotion making it hard to speak. Jennifer showed up, which I hadn't expected. She stayed in the back, didn't approach me, just paid her respects and left. I saw her crying as she walked to her car. I felt nothing. The next week, Bob Hutchins and I met to begin the estate settlement process. Dad's estate was valued at $2.3 million. The house, worth $650,000 in Portland's inflated market. Investment accounts, $1.2 million. Life insurance, $400,000. And various other assets. It's all yours, Bob said. Clean transfer. Derek has 30 days to contest, but I don't think he will. Why not? I asked. Because I sent his lawyer a courtesy copy of all your evidence. The messages, the recordings, the attempted exploitation. I also included a memo outlining the costs of a failed contest per the will's terms. He'd be looking at $100,000 in legal fees minimum, with zero chance of success. No sane lawyer would take that case. Bob was right. The 30-day window came and went. Derek never contested, but the criminal cases moved forward. In early November, a grand jury indicted Jennifer on 2 counts of felony theft. The DA's office was seeking prison time. Catherine Morrison didn't mess around. Jennifer's public defender reached out to Rachel Kwan, trying to negotiate a plea deal. She wants to plead down to misdemeanor theft, probation, no prison time. Rachel told me, they're offering full restitution. What do you think? I asked. I think Catherine will reject it. The evidence is too strong. The theft was too calculated. Jennifer took small amounts deliberately designed to avoid detection. That shows criminal sophistication, not a moment of weakness. Good, I said. Let her face the consequences. The Adult Protective Services investigation wrapped up in late November. They're finding credible evidence of attempted financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. They referred the case to the DA's office for criminal charges. Derek was indicted in early December on 1 count of attempted theft from a vulnerable person. It was a Class B felony in Oregon, carrying up to 10 years in prison. I got the news from Catherine Morrison. His lawyer is already reaching out about a plea, she said. He doesn't want this to go to trial. What are they offering? Pleading guilty to attempted exploitation, suspended sentence, 5 years probation, community service, and a permanent mark on his record. Plus, he'd have to pay all your legal costs. No prison time? Not unless he violates probation. It's a decent offer, considering the evidence. A trial is risky for both sides. I want him to admit what he did, I said. Publicly. On the record. I want the whole world to know what he tried to do to Dad. If he pleads guilty, it'll be part of the public record, Catherine assured me. Court documents, statements, all of it. Anyone who looks will see exactly what happened. I thought about it, thought about Dad, about what he would have wanted. Okay, if he admits guilt publicly, I'll accept the plea. Derek took the deal. In January, he stood in a Portland courtroom and pleaded guilty to attempted exploitation of a vulnerable adult. He had to read a statement acknowledging what he'd done, how he'd tried to manipulate our dying father into signing away his estate, how he'd pressured and deceived him. I was there, sitting in the gallery, watching my brother, my older brother who'd once taught me to ride a bike and helped me with homework, admit to the world that he'd tried to steal from our father. He didn't look at me, not once. The judge sentenced him to 5 years probation, 500 hours of community service, and ordered him to pay $47,000 in legal fees and court costs. She also gave a statement that I'll never forget. Mr. Chen, you stand here today yesterday convicted of one of the most despicable acts I've seen in my career. The exploitation of your own dying father for financial gain. The only reason you're not going to prison is because your father had the strength and the support to resist your manipulation. But make no mistake, your actions were predatory, cruel, and a betrayal of everything family should mean. I hope you spend every day of your probation reflecting on what you've become. Derek left the courthouse with his lawyer. I heard later that he'd lost his job in Chicago. His employer had a morals clause, and a felony conviction violated it. He'd also lost his condo when he couldn't make the mortgage payments. Jennifer's trial was in February. She'd rejected the plea deal, gambling that a jury would be sympathetic. They weren't. The evidence was overwhelming. Carl's forensic analysis showed 147 separate transfers from our joint account to the secret account she shared with Derek. Catherine Morrison walked the jury through each one, showing the deliberate pattern, the careful timing, the calculation. Then she brought me to the stand. "Mr. Chen, where were you during the period when your wife was stealing from you?" Catherine asked. "I was taking care of my father," I said. "He had terminal cancer. I was his primary caregiver." "And did your wife know this?" "Yes. She encouraged me to spend time with him, told me not to worry about work or finances, that she'd handle things. And while you were caring for your dying father, where was your wife? She was stealing from me and having an affair with my brother." The jury was horrified. I could see it on their faces. Jennifer's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim, claimed Derek had manipulated her, that she'd been in love and made poor choices. But the messages I'd recovered destroyed that narrative. Jennifer's own words showed she'd been an active participant, not a victim. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on both counts. Sentencing was a month later. The judge gave her 3 years in prison, with credit for time served and possibility of parole after 18 months. She also ordered full restitution, $60,000 plus interest and fees. Jennifer cried as they led her away. I felt nothing but a kind of distant sadness. Not for her, but for the man I'd been who had loved her. That man was gone, killed by her betrayal. In the aftermath of both trials, I found myself in a strange place. The legal battles were over. The estate was settled. Dad's house was mine. I decided to keep it, at least for now. It felt wrong to sell the place I'd grown up in, where Dad had spent his last months. I took a full month off work, used the time to clean out Dad's house properly, deciding what to keep, what to donate, what to throw away. I found boxes of old photos in the attic. Mom and Dad young and happy. Derek and me as kids. Family vacations. Birthday parties. There were good times. Before Mom got sick. Before Derek changed. Before everything fell apart. I kept some photos. Put them in an album. Maybe someday I'd want to remember the good times. I also found Dad's journal from his last months. He'd written in it sporadically, when he had the energy. I almost didn't read it. It felt like an invasion of privacy. But a note on the first page said, "For Marcus, after I'm gone." The entries were heartbreaking. Dad writing about his fears, his pain, his regrets, but also about his pride in me, his gratitude for my care, his hopes for my future. One entry dated a week before he died. "Marcus came today. He looks exhausted, but he's still here, still showing up. I don't know what I did to deserve a son like him, but I thank God every day." Derek called, demanded to know about the will. I told him Marcus is getting everything. He screamed at me, called me senile, said I was being manipulated. Maybe I am old and dying and confused about some things, but I'm not confused about this. Derek chose money over family. Marcus chose family over everything. The choice of who gets my estate is the easiest decision I've ever made. I cried reading that. Sitting on the floor of Dad's bedroom, surrounded by boxes of his belongings, I finally let myself fully grieve. For Dad, for my marriage, for my brother who'd become a stranger, for the life I'd thought I had. I cried for hours. And when I was done, I felt lighter somehow. Clean, ready to move forward. In March, I went back to work. My company had been incredibly understanding. They'd kept my position open, even promoted me to senior architect in my absence as a show of support. The work felt good, normal, a return to routine and purpose. I sold the house I'd shared with Jennifer. Too many memories. I bought a smaller condo downtown, modern and clean with no ghosts. Started fresh. I also started therapy. Real therapy, not just the checkup I'd gotten to counter Derek's narrative. Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation, specialized in trauma and betrayal. We met weekly. "You've been through a complex series of losses," she told me in our first session. "Your father, your marriage, your brother, your trust. That's a lot to process." "I'm managing," I said. "You're surviving," she corrected gently. "But I want you to do more than survive. I want you to heal, to rebuild, to trust again." It took months of sessions, of working through anger and grief and the deep betrayal that had rewired my brain. Months of learning that Jennifer and Derek's actions weren't my fault, that I hadn't been naive or stupid. I'd been loving and trusting, which are good things, even when they're exploited. Slowly, very slowly, I started to feel human again. I created the foundation in June, the Marcus Chen Hospice Support Fund, established with $500,000 from Dad's estate. It provided financial assistance and respite care for family caregivers of terminal patients. Everything I'd wished existed when I was caring for Dad. The foundation's mission statement included a dedication, in memory of Robert Chen, who taught his son that love is an action, not just a feeling. The foundation helped dozens of families in its first year. I volunteered there on weekends, talking to exhausted caregivers, assuring them they weren't alone, telling them what I'd learned, that caring for a dying loved one is both the hardest and most meaningful thing you can do. In August, I got a letter forwarded from Bob Hutchins. It was from Derek. I almost threw it away without reading it, but curiosity won. "Marcus, I know you won't believe this, and I don't expect forgiveness, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Sorry for what I did. Losing Dad, losing you, losing everything. It's shown me what actually matters. I was so focused on money and success that I forgot how to be human. I forgot how to be a brother. I'm in therapy now. Court mandated it first, but I'm continuing because I need it. I'm trying to figure out where I went wrong, how I became someone who could do what I did. I don't expect a response. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything, and I'm sorry. Derek." I read it 3 times, tried to find the manipulation, the angle, but it just sounded tired, defeated, maybe even genuine. I didn't respond. Maybe someday I would. Maybe someday we could have a conversation about what happened and why, but not now. The wounds were still too fresh. I showed the letter to Dr. Chen in our next session. "How do you feel about it?" she asked. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to believe he's changed. Part of me thinks it's just another con." "Both could be true," she said. "People can change, but that doesn't obligate you to let them back into your life." "I know. What do you want, Marcus?" I thought about it. "I want to move forward, with or without Derek. I want to build a life that isn't defined by what they did to me." Then can do that, she said simply. So I did. In October, a year after Dad's death, I scattered his ashes at his favorite fishing spot, a quiet bend in the Clackamas River where he'd taken me and Derek as kids. I debated inviting Derek, but in the end, I went alone. I stood on the riverbank, holding the urn, remembering all the trips here. Dad teaching us to cast, to be patient, to appreciate the quiet. When had Derek stopped appreciating the quiet? When had he started seeing everything as something to exploit? Hey Dad, I said to the wind and the water. I did what you asked. I didn't let them win. The estate is secure. The foundation is helping people. I'm healing. I'm actually okay. I opened the urn and let the ashes scatter across the water, watching them float downstream, becoming part of the river Dad had loved. Derek sent a letter, I continued. Says he's sorry. I don't know if I believe him. I don't know if I'll ever talk to him again. But I'm not carrying the anger anymore. I'm letting it go, just like I'm letting you go. Tears ran down my face. I miss you, Dad. Every day. But you were right. I'm going to be okay. Better than okay. Eventually. I promise. I stayed there for an hour, just listening to the river, feeling the sun on my face. When I left, I felt like I'd closed a chapter. Not forgotten, but completed. In November, I met Sarah. Not my therapist, Dr. Chen, but Sarah Martinez, a trauma nurse who worked in the ER. We met at a foundation fundraiser. She'd lost her father to cancer the year before and wanted to volunteer. We talked for 3 hours at that fundraiser about loss and caregiving and healing, about the specific pain of watching a parent die, about rebuilding after disaster. You get it, she said at one point. Most people don't get it unless they've lived it. Yeah, I said. I get it. We exchanged numbers, started texting, had coffee a week later, then dinner, then more dinners. I was terrified. Terrified of trusting again. Terrified of being hurt. But Dr. Chen's words echoed. You're surviving, but I want you to do more than survive. So I tried. Slowly, carefully, but I tried. Sarah was patient. She didn't push. When I told her about Jennifer and Derek, the whole story, she listened without judgment. That's incredibly painful, she said. I'm so sorry you went through that. I'm working on it, I said. I can tell, she smiled. You're here. You're trying. That takes courage. By December, we were officially dating. By spring, I was telling Dr. Chen that I thought I might be falling in love. How does that feel, she asked. Scary, I admitted, but also good. Really good. That's normal, she assured me. After betrayal, it takes courage to love again. But you're doing it. That's growth. Jennifer got out on parole in July after serving 18 months. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she was working retail, living with her mother, trying to rebuild her life. She'd sent a letter through Rachel Kwan asking if we could talk. I declined. There was nothing left to say. Derek was still in Chicago, working some entry-level job, still on probation. I heard from Bob Hutchins that Derek had asked if I'd consider a phone call. I wasn't ready. Maybe someday, but not yet. In August, 2 years after Dad's death, Sarah and I got engaged. Simple proposal by the river where I'd scattered Dad's ashes. She cried. I cried. It was perfect. Are you sure? I asked her, half joking but also serious. I'm kind of a mess. Trust issues, trauma, family drama. Everyone's a mess, she said. You're just honest about it. And you're doing the work to heal. That's all that matters. We married in October in a small ceremony. Just close friends, Sarah's family, a few colleagues. No drama, no betrayal, just love and support and hope for the future. At the reception, Sarah's father gave a toast. I've known Marcus less than a year, but I've seen who he is. He's someone who shows up, who does the right thing even when it's hard, who loves deeply and honors his commitments. My daughter couldn't have chosen better. I thought about Dad, about what he'd taught me, about his final words. Promise me you'll heal, that you'll find love again, that you'll be happy. I'd kept that promise. Later that night, alone with Sarah in our hotel room, she asked me something. Do you think you'll ever reconcile with Derek? I thought about it. I don't know. Maybe someday. If he really has changed, if he's done the work, maybe. But it'll never be like it was. We'll never be brothers the way we were as kids. That's okay, Sarah said. You can grieve the relationship you lost while building the life you deserve. She was right. That's exactly what I was doing. 3 years after Dad's death, the foundation had helped over 200 families. We'd expanded to provide counseling services, respite care, and financial assistance. The board wanted to name it the Robert and Marcus Chen Foundation. I declined. It was Dad's legacy, not mine. I thought about Dad constantly, missed him constantly, but the grief had shifted from acute pain to something more manageable. A permanent ache, yes, but one I could live with. I thought about Derek sometimes too. Wondered if he really had changed. Wondered if that letter had been genuine. Part of me wanted to reach out. Part of me wasn't ready. Maybe someday. And Jennifer? I barely thought about her at all. She was a character in a story about someone else's life. The man she'd betrayed no longer existed. I'd become someone new. On the 4th anniversary of Dad's death, Sarah and I went to the river together. We stood on the bank where I'd scattered his ashes. Tell me about him, Sarah said. She'd heard stories, but she asked me to tell her more. So I did. I told her about Dad teaching me to fish here, about his patience and kindness, about his integrity, about the way he'd raised me to value character over comfort. He sounds wonderful, Sarah said. He was, I agreed. He would have loved you. I wish I could have met him. Me too. We stood in comfortable silence, watching the water flow. Then Sarah said something that made me smile. You're like him, you know? The way you talk about integrity and showing up, that's him living through you. His legacy isn't just the money or the foundation, it's who you are. She was right. Dad's real legacy wasn't the estate Derek had tried to steal. It wasn't the house or the investments or any of it. It was the values he'd instilled in me. The character he'd modeled. The lessons about integrity and compassion and doing the right thing even when it's hard. Derek could never have stolen that. Jennifer could never have betrayed it away. It was mine because I'd chosen to embody it. That evening, back at our house, I opened my laptop and did something I'd been avoiding for 4 years. I wrote an email to Derek. Derek, I got your letter a few years ago. I wasn't ready to respond then. I'm not sure I'm ready now. But I wanted you to know that I read it, that I heard you. I don't know if we'll ever have a relationship again. I don't know if I can forgive what you did to Dad, what you did to me, but I don't want to carry the anger anymore. So I'm letting you know, I'm moving forward with my life. I'm happy. I'm married to an amazing woman. I'm doing work that matters. Dad would be proud. I hope someday you find peace too. Not for my sake, but for yours. In Marcus. I stared at the email for 10 minutes before hitting send. When I did, I felt something release in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly. Not reconciliation, but closure. Sarah found me sitting at the laptop, staring at the sent mail confirmation. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I said. I think I am. What did you say to him? That I'm moving forward, that I'm happy, that I hope he finds peace. And do you? Hope he finds finds peace. I thought about it honestly. Yeah, I do. Not because he deserves it, but because carrying hatred just hurts me. Dad taught me better than that. Sarah kissed the top of my head. Your dad did a good job with you. Yeah, I smiled. He really did. 5 years after Dad's death, Sarah and I had our first child, a daughter. We named her Robin, a feminine version of Robert. She had Sarah's eyes and my father's gentle spirit. Holding her in the hospital, I thought about Dad, about how he never got to meet her, about how she'd never know her grandfather except through my stories. But I'd tell her those stories. I'd teach her what he taught me, about showing up, about integrity, about choosing character over comfort. Derek sent a card when Robin was born. Just a simple congratulations with a note. She's beautiful. You're going to be a great father. I didn't respond, but I kept the card. Maybe someday Robin would want to know about her uncle. Maybe by then I'd have a better answer about who he was and what happened. Or maybe some stories don't need perfect endings. Maybe some relationships can't be salvaged. And maybe that's okay. What mattered was what I built from the ruins. The foundation that helped others. The marriage built on honesty and trust. The daughter who would grow up knowing her grandfather through stories of his kindness and strength. They'd tried to take everything. They'd failed. Not because I was smarter or stronger or better, but because I'd chosen differently than they had. I'd chosen integrity over exploitation, truth over deception, love over greed, and in the end, that choice made all the difference. 7 years after Dad's death, I returned to the river one last time. Robin was 2 years old, toddling around on the riverbank while Sarah and I watched carefully. Dada, fish. Robin pointed excitedly at the water. That's right, sweetheart. This is where your grandfather used to fish, where he taught me to fish. Grandpa? Yeah, Grandpa. He was a good man. You would have loved him. Good man, Robin repeated, the way toddlers do. I looked at Sarah, at Robin, at the river that held Dad's ashes, and so many memories. They'd tried to destroy my life. They'd almost succeeded, but I'd rebuilt. Not the same life. Something better, something real. You know what, Dad? I said quietly to the wind and water. I kept my promise. I healed. I found love. I'm happy. And for the first time since his death, I said it and completely meant it. I was happy, not despite what happened, but because of what I'd chosen to do with it. I'd taken the worst betrayal imaginable and used it to become someone better, someone stronger, someone who Dad would be proud of. Ready to teach her to fish? Sarah asked, smiling. Not quite yet, I said, but soon. When she's ready, I'll bring her here. I'll tell her about her grandfather, and I'll teach her what he taught me. What's that? That character is what you do when no one's watching. That family is who shows up. That love is an action, not just a feeling. Sarah squeezed my hand. He'd be so proud of you. I hope so, I said. I really hope so. We stayed by the river until sunset, watching the water flow, watching Robin play, building memories on top of old ones. The betrayal would always be part of my story. Jennifer and Derek would always be part of my past, but they weren't my future. They weren't my present. This was my present. A wife who loved me, a daughter who called me Dada, a foundation helping others, a life built on the values Dad had taught me. They'd tried to take everything. Instead, they'd given me the chance to discover who I really was, and I was grateful. Not for the betrayal itself, that still hurt, probably always would, but for the person I'd become in surviving it. As we packed up to leave, Robin ran over and hugged my leg. Love you, Dada. Love you too, sweetheart. And in that moment, standing by the river where I'd scattered my father's ashes, holding my daughter, standing beside my wife, I realized something profound. I'd won, not because I destroyed them, though they destroyed themselves just fine, but because I'd built something they could never touch, something real and good and true. I'd built a life worth living, and that, in the end, was the best revenge of all.